why is so important to practice something in order to be capable to calm myself, in order to be capable to really put everything together. And I'm gonna say this sadly, but it's true. Sometimes the sports is the only place when they can experiment freedom.
You are listening to Yogi Patel on Now What with Eder Cuevas. I, of course, am excited to speak with another Montessorian, and this Montessorian has experience in sports education, adolescence, and much more. But instead of me saying what Eder has to offer, let me ask him, Eder, tell us a little bit about your background and perhaps start with how did you get into Montessori and all the work that you have done so far?
I am being part of the Montessori School of Chihuahua. I'm currently living here since 20 years ago. And they started because they create an adolescent program. So they need one person to follow what is called a Good Shepherd. That is a program that Montessori, it is related to Montessori for elementary. And then they want someone to take this part to adolescence. So I get involved in that way. But after half of the year, the school offered me to send me to Bergamo in Italy to this elementary level training center. So I went there to take my training, and it was wonderful. It was one of the best and transformative experience of all my life. So that's why I became a Montessorian. And after that, like you mentioned, I've been involved in the adolescent world since I think 2014. I was really connected with David Kahn for like 5 to 6 years, and with different Montessorians around the world, helping to increase the number of programs that we have for adolescents, because it is truly amazing how Montessori works for adolescents. So I'm really happy that there are more and more experiences for them around the world. So that's a little bit about it. For the sports, that it's really important. With my studies was around that in college. And then after that, when I came back from Bergamo, so I started to teach in the university here in Chihuahua for 15 years. So I was in charge for some of the areas in the bachelor degree, but also in the master degree, because I do have a sports psychology master degree.
So interestingly enough, when my children were younger, we believed Montessori education, was for young children. So when I travel around the world, in some countries, we see Montessori education as a preschool program. And what you just mentioned, Montessori is not just for very young tots, but we actually have Montessori program all the way to high school. And many public schools are now embracing Montessori education. So we're seeing in the United States, at least, lots and lots of high schools that are Montessori. And sports, what an integral role sports plays, in it's the social, emotional, intellectual growth of our children. So I think parents may also have some questions relating to this, and this was my belief. So perhaps parents sometimes believe that Montessori program, perhaps doesn't have sports or physical activities. Tell us a little bit more about how did you kind of combine Montessori and sports? Because sports is part of life, and we play often after school or on the weekend. However, many schools do incorporate sports in the schools.
As you mentioned, sports are part of life. It is not just a question related to parents, actually, because some of the guides, some of the teachers are also like a little bit confused about this. What about sports? Because sports has this component of competition, and we are Montessori. We don't like competition. We don't like peace. We don't like community. But at the end, I think the way that for me since the beginning was easy to relate it is around movement, because for doing sports, you need movement. It is a physical activity, but with rules. So therefore, one of the main things that for me was the point of action is understanding what actually movement is. And Dr. Montessori was truly amazing talking about movement. She was understanding that this is part of the way that we need to learn, and the way that it is a part of the behavior of the personality. It's part of the creation of the personality. So that's why movement is the essential component of Montessori education. It is a sensitive period, as we know. We like to have the children free to move inside the classroom and outside, of course, the classrooms, because there are a lot of neurological connections or the synapses that we have in our nervous system. So that's why it's really important related to sports, but not in the way that we usually believe that sports are, because we usually think that it's having a ball or having the rules or any sports that you want to play. And we said, okay, let's do it. But it is the same thing applying to what Montessori relates in the sense of isolation of the difficulty. So it's not that we're doing a sports per se in children's house or in infant community or in Nido, of course. But we are starting with movements that little by little is going to create the skills needed for the sports later. And as we know in the second plane of development, we know that in elementary, these parts that they need to be with other children are created also the great opportunity to start sports in a better way. Now more clear, now more connected, now the way that we know sports. But before that, we think in physical activity, in some actions, some movements that they are going to need later in the sense of sports.
You spoke about guides in the schools. How do we incorporate sports? How do we begin to offer sports during the breaks, noticing that we have the 3-hour work period in the morning, which is uninterrupted, 2 hours in the afternoon?
We know then, and we respect that. I think it's something that we need to respect in order to have a really good sports program or movement program. The first thing is that understanding that the movement that is involved is going to help to improve academic through the movement. The movement is so connected, as I mentioned, with the nervous system. So it's going to be helpful. And the other thing is that, as we know, there are children that needs to move more than the others because they have a lot of energy. So they really need this. And then they can be more ready to work to the hands or to this cycle that we have. So it's going to depend of the child's need. One of the options, well, there are several options. One thing can be, for instance, Montessori Sports is offering to have one shelf like we do have for practical life activities or for language or for mathematics. It's a possibility to have also a shelf that they can use, like they take the materials, go outside, having a presentation, do the presentation, coming back, leave it there, and then pick another material or have another lesson. That is a possibility in Children's House. I'm really seeing some programs that they incorporate this, and sometimes they're related with cards, with the commands that and the options that you have there. We know how is later in elementary that there are some relationships also with language, with things in terms of verb, that verbs involve movement. So therefore, we can connect it with action that they can do outside, again, with physical activity. But the traditional way to see this is how you can incorporate in an after class sessions that you can have in afternoon or in other times that you can have. By the way, a really option that is working, and I really encourage the schools to do, or try at least, is starting each morning with sports. And I think in an adolescent, if you have this, because they need sports in order to help, of course, healthy, but they are going to get in the classrooms for any of the science, humanity, or any other subject that they're going to have. So they are more ready for that. They are really want to do that, because the energy that they are not just spend, but also acquire, because the movement is giving you this part up to the body to encourage to do more and more activities. So it's going to be helpful in the sense to have concentration and the sense of cooperation and all the things that need to require to lead through the day. So it's a wonderful way to start the day.
Love the way that we could start the morning with sports. Eder, how could we transition from the sports time outdoors back into the classroom to prepare for the day?
When we do nothing, when we just say, okay, go outside and come back, it's going to be a chaos. It's chaotic because, again, the energy that they are experimenting in their bodies are giving a lot of movement and giving a lot of talk. I'm not going to lead the conversation to sweating and all the things, but of course, it's something happening with the body. So we need to incorporate in the way we are in the sports environments. We need to incorporate the breathing in, breathing out, some exercise that is going to help to regulate the way that they are right now and the way that they're going to move to the classroom. So it is really important to have this time to relax, to have this time if they need to do something with maybe changing the clothes or maybe have a shower. I don't know. The way that they can also because the programs, the kind of schedule that they have. So we need to be really aware that is part of the sports lesson or the sport lectures, not just to have the exercise, but also to understand, to observe ourselves, to know ourselves, our body, and then regulate in order to have the other activities.
What you're speaking about is even before the school year begins, making a plan and having a schedule that's set, because this requires thinking through the process on how all of the classrooms are going to function. So the whole school can become involved in figuring out, all right, so what is our day going to look like? Because this includes communication with parents, getting the uniforms in order. How did you incorporate, if you worked with a school where you didn't have a sports program, how do you get started? Can you give us a little bit of step-by-step process that could encourage folks to even give it a go?
Yes, the first thing is really to reflect. It sounds really easy, but it is to reflect, why do we want to incorporate this? What are the kind of needs that we are observing? And that's the way that you start to prioritize and the way that you're going to approach this. It's not going to be easy in the beginning. And I always said that if you want to incorporate something, one of the main things, especially for the first plane of development, we start to do some activities that the same teachers or guides can lead. Something really simple, something we know that we have some lessons to do inside when they are walking around the circle, or there are many activities that you can do. The practical life are plenty of movement, but outside you can do something. You can be singing, doing some moves. You can do many activities in the way that they are starting to do something more and more. And later you can incorporate into your staff, your faculty, some experts of this sport, some experts of movement. Again, maybe you don't want to have sports per se, but first start with physical activity, with physical education. But of course, always recommended in a Montessori way, that you can incorporate all the principles applying to the physical activity of the sports. This is always going to be important because in this action, in this sense, you can incorporate some lessons that are going to be part of the things that they can do by themselves. So again, the way that we approach movement, the way that we approach physical education or sports is always something that is going to lead to independence. It's always that it's going to lead to observe themselves and take it what they need in order to grow better, in order to develop not just physically, but also mentally and socially in this thing.
It seems just almost like a 3-period lesson in the primary environment or a toddler 2-period lesson, giving a little bit of information, building upon it, and then getting to a place where the program meets the needs of the individual children and the whole group. And something interesting that you mentioned when you were speaking, it came to me. Sometimes we think of the word sports and we always think it has to be competitive or it has to include everyone. What is your opinion about sports in schools and what could that look like?
Again, it is a process, in order to reach sports. I think if we understand that process, we're going to be more ready to incorporate sports, because sports is just the action that's going to prepare you for a match or for a competition. And you can change the sports. The sports is the way that it is, but we can change the way that we approach sports. That's the thing that we need. So again, using the same principles, using the methodology, we can start by seeing how different we are. So we know that the people are different. We know that children are different, and we need to observe and understand the skills that they have and the attitude around that and all the things that they need to evolve. So we need to follow each child in order to know what is the next step to do. What is the challenge right now that this child is having right now. So I'm going to give you tools. I'm going to give some presentation in order to improve that. Not in the traditional way that we see in the traditional schools. That is, all of them are having the same lesson. Also, it's an adult there yelling the whole time, doing some instruction, and you need to do this. And I'm going to tell you when you need to stop. Again, it is quite different, because if you know what you want to work with, if you can have this wonderful thing that we have in Montessori, like, really, it's possible to choose my own work. Yeah, of course. You can do this, or this, or any of the other presentations that you already have. There is the material available for you. So again, we follow in that sense the inner teacher that each child has inside. So we follow that need for movement, that we always have this need for movement, but in the way that they want to approach, because sometimes one day I want to run 10 kilometers, but the other day I'm really not ready for 10, maybe just one, and maybe I'm just walking and that's it. So it's the same way that we're following the child, saying, maybe I'm not ready today. I'm really having a bad day. So it is not possible for me to move. Okay, what is possible to do? What are the other options? Maybe I can incorporate some areas, because sports is so related to many other topics, to many other areas. For instance, I love with children right now. There are some competition in sports. There are Eurocup and about America football, or they understand more about the regions, or they understand about the countries, but they know about the flags, or they know about the names, or about the culture of the other countries. So this is wonderful that we can relate the sports with many other areas.
And what you mentioned also is the interest, right? So if someone is interested, having the materials there, someone wants to take a badminton, take the tennis rackets out, they can invite a friend to join them. However, the most key component here, or aspect that I'm taking away, is offering a presentation on how to first. So when we deliver the items or the equipment or the materials to the children, showing them first the guidelines, the rules, like how is it played for it to be more effective. You spoke a little bit about it in different planes of development, about how it connects to the inner growth, through the movement. Maybe the concentration is one thing that you talked about, and hand-eye coordination, movement. Could we talk a little bit about toddler and primary? And then we are going to move into the 6 to 12, but 18 months to 5 or 6 years of age. What are some of the ways that we can incorporate sports that would really meet the needs of that individual child and their development?
Well, the first thing is, as we know, is a sensitive period, as I mentioned. So movement is something that you need to incorporate in order to be an aid to life. It's something that we need to connect in each plane. So I'm going to talk a little bit about where you're requiring this sense of is always trying to give more movement. It's always to try to give more tools that they can relate to their own development. For instance, we know that there are some stairs, or there are some materials that they need movements. We also have some materials to move the eyes, to the coordination with the hands, to the coordination with the feet. So there are different things that we're going to do. But one of the things for them especially is having a free time. Again, the inner teacher is gonna lead to the action. It's not going to remain the whole time there. If you have different materials, you have different things around, they are gonna work with that. But one of the things that for me was really important to understand as a parent, because I'm gonna tell you a short story. I really think that you're gonna love, because my background in physical education and in sport, I was really aware about the needs of my child around 1 year old. I was really worried that she was not crawling. So I was like, something is happening. Maybe, and as a parent, you have a lot of things on your head, a lot of fears around movement and around development. So, and then was a teacher coming from Denmark. It was really nice because we have a really seasoned teacher. I talked with her and said, I'm worried about this. She's not crawling. So I'm really worried. So she said something that was really simple for me. And I give you as advice. It's just that Well, I think you should crawl. You need to crawl yourself. So really, and I said, should I do that? Yes, you need to do it. That night, I came back home and I say, okay, let's do it. So I started to crawl, and it was like this. In that instant, my child was start to follow me, to follow the said movement. And it was the way that it was the explosion of the movement. So one of the things that I'm saying is that for this first plane is modeling. You need to model the movement. If you're moving as a parent, the child is going to follow you. If you want them to move, if they want to play sports, if they want to do something, you need to do it. Again, it's the same thing with values. It's the same thing with any other activity. If you want the children to read, well, that's the option. That's the way that you're going to learn. It's not because you're telling them, it's because you're doing it. So the same thing happened with movement. And in this part, in this first plane of development, it's not that we've incorporated sport as a part that has rules, that has like the way that we think, and you just put it in a small part of that. No. It's some physical activity around that sport that's going to lead later to do actually a sport like that.
You're listening to Now What? Podcast with Yogi Patel, and my guest is Eder Cuevas, and he is a sports psychologist working with Montessori schools. And if you like the content of this podcast, please don't forget to follow. Eder, you shared just an amazing story about your own daughter and crawling. So the modeling, the behavior we want to see, and it's fascinating. So as guides, sometimes when something is not happening, we can focus on what's not working versus let us look at what we're modeling, how we're showing up in the classroom or at home, that we can sort of edit our actions that the children are going to learn from. So we were talking about the 0 to 6, actually concentrating more on 18 months to 6 years of age. So you spoke about sensitive period. So how does order and sports come together?
If you really observe a sport, it's always about order. It's always about orientation. It's always about the structure. You need to follow and you need to repeat mostly the same thing, one by one. And then when you're actually in a competition, in a match, or you're practicing sports, you do adaptation of that movement. So that's why order is really important. If we're going to help them, you need to try to give them in that part that they know exactly what to do before the activity, during the activity, and later after the activity. This is also happening with the habits that we need in order to be ready with all the practical life activities, right? To be ready to have your own material to do the whole activity. So order is essential, and the order also is part what the adult needs, and again, to model. Because this is the way that we're starting the session. This is the way that we conclude the session. The same thing with the materials. If you want to bring the materials, take the materials, use them, and then to conclude the whole activity is take the material back and put it there in their own place. So order is essential. The order is not just intrinsical, not just inside you, but also outside. And this is going to be part of something that leads us to another special component of Montessori education, that is prepared environment. So the order should be there. The order to have everything on the right time and in the right place.
Then refinement of senses and movement and language. Maybe we can combine all those. How would the sports embrace this sensitive period?
Because we said that is part of life. So sports is gonna give you a lot of experience around to do this. It's going to lead to through different activities to start to use the sensitive periods. I love that you refer to refining the senses, because it is essential. It's the way that you do. And in sports, through the movement that we said, it's going to be the way that we practice this. It's going to be the way that by the repetition, that is always the word that is involved for the second part of the tutorial lesson. It's going to be the repetition, one after that they're going to do, that we're we're capable to do something. So if you want to have that skills, if you want to have something, some knowledge that is there, you need repetition in order to be there. But the thing with the sports, the thing is with physical activity is a lot of fun. They love the things because they're so connected also with the others. It's so connected with activities that we can do together. So it's leading to a lot of connection. And this is a part also of building community. It's not just that the sports it's going to be, but there are some sports, of course, that are individual. But when you're starting at this level, it's something that you enjoy doing with another child. So that's why it's important to understand more about the psychology of the child, to understand more about education, and understand that at the end, sports is just another tool to become a better human. It's not something that has an end per se. It's another way to incorporate order to your life. It's another way about the well-being. It's something that is going to give us that way to reach this point.
I appreciate what you just said. It's that eccentric motivation. It's not that I need to be better than another person, but the peace comes from I and where I belong. Because human beings, as we know in psychology, we strive. We're always striving to improve and get better, right? We have those human tendencies. Perfection is, something that we all want. And that seems to be different from one child to another. That includes interest. I might like to, play with maybe a racket is my thing or golfing, it's something, or a ball. So depending on the interest in having this array of information or materials readily available after a lesson is provided, seems like part of the Montessori environment. And this could be easily implemented into a traditional program as well. So not just saying, here is the equipment and let's go with it. However,
I'm loving to hear that is that the one that needs to change the mindset is the adult. The one that you really need to incorporate this idea and these principles is the adult. The child is just going to behave as a consequence of that. So if we has in our beliefs that sports is something wrong, or sports is something that you have to beat the other, that you have to compete with the other, but not as a process. Again, I really like this part to say like the sport is also an aid to life. It's something that we need to understand that is really, really important related to development, but not in the traditional way that we usually are used to, that we have in our mind, like it is a competition, because that is going to be against the nature of the human being. It's in the nature of humankind, but it's always that we like to be related with others. So the one that needs to improve, the one that needs to really become better in the sports is me, but with my own challenge. It's not your challenge. It's not our challenge. It's my challenge. So I need to work for that. I need to really do my best with the movements and with the practice to become a better person. Not just and this is important also for me. It's not just that is the sport. It's not just the athlete. It is a human being. So being an athlete is something that is part of your life. It is not your whole life. So behind that athlete is a person. So when we see sports, we know that, wow, it was a mistake. He was not running well, or he was not doing but you know what? It's a human being. It's something through the emotions. It's something about he's not having a good day, having a good time. He's in crisis or whatever. So we need to understand that it's not because he needs to score more. It is not because they need to win. It's just about being a better human being through the sport. This is a great tool. This is a wonderful way to become a better human.
Thank you for that, Ada. And I wonder so something else that we said, us, the adults, can view the sports in a way of where the individual child is. This is where my child is. Yes, they had a bad day, but it's the effort. It's not the end result. The end results will continue to change because the young person is already seeing their performance. They're eccentrically aware and that change is happening, because it takes family, community, and, the school environment. So it's a whole community at large that plays a role in raising this child. I know in the recent year, we keep talking about takes a village. For children, how could we incorporate parents, school, and have these sports where everyone has fun? I know at my school, one of the things that we did was, 3 picnics per year. So we got together, we celebrated all of the holidays. How could we incorporate? And I know this is a question that's just coming up for me. There has to be a way that we can incorporate fun experience of sports with parents.
Yes, this is also a wonderful question. There are many examples that the school does. I want to start saying that it doesn't matter the activity. The child wants to do it with the adult. It doesn't matter the activity, really. If it's cooking, if it's painting, if it's carpentry, if it's watching the car, if it's whatever. I mean, they love it. But the sports is something that is really related to them. So it's something that they want to do it and something that they have fun. So it is a wonderful way as a reminder of the adults that we like the sports. And we like in a sheltering way. We like to have fun with it. So movements, try new things and just be with them and enjoy yourself being a child in that particular time. Because one wonderful thing that is happening with the sports, especially if you're playing with children, is that the beauty of being in present, the beauty of just being in that moment. It doesn't matter what's happening in life. It doesn't matter the problems that we have. It doesn't matter what it's outside. It's just being there. So they love it. It is a wonderful gift that the children is doing. It's given for us. And it's something wonderful that you're going to spend that day. The connection that creates. This is a wonderful experience that creates a bond between parents and children. And it's a wonderful creating this experience that is going to help us to have more connection there. And then later, as a school, you always can have activities once or twice a year when you're doing this. Maybe just running or just walking around some facilities, or try to get connected with some games. It's always fun to do. One thing that is really important is have many choices, many options that for them to choose to say, well, I want to do this or I want to do this. So if you have different activities, it's going to be great, because they are wanting to do it, and there's a will also that's going to lead to say, yes, I want to try this. Again, sports is a wonderful way to create this sense of community, because at the same time, you can spend the time with activities there, and you see the other parents doing the same thing. And it's always this sense, this feeling, we're in the same page. We're part of this community, and this is going to lead to conversations later. And why not to have another kind of relationship later?
It sounds like, I think parents and teachers can have surveys nowadays, because we have so many tools to figure out what the next picnic would look like or next gathering might look like, and which parents and teachers can combine their efforts together to create some fun games for, maybe there will be an area where there's tug of war or the potato sack races. So sports doesn't necessarily have to be competitive, is what I'm getting from this conversation. It unites, it invites children to have many skills that you talked about, and it's just really inspiring. So I want to move into the elementary section next. So this is Now What podcast with Yogi Patel, and Eder Cuevas is our guest today, speaking about sports. If you like the content of this podcast, don't forget to follow and sign up. When I was a young child, growing up in India, when I went from my primary years to the elementary, when I was in first grade, the most exciting and scary moment of my life, because I was going to go into a new environment. I didn't know anyone but my friends who are going to be moving with me to this next grade. One of the things that was really helpful was continuation of this order that we spoke about. What happens every day, the routines of the day. And every morning in India, in the school that I attended, and most schools, you start on the playground. You start with physical exercises, and then you line up based on your grade level or your class, and then you go into the classrooms with your teacher. So as we talk about sports in elementary, how could just first to third grade, which is called lower elementary in Montessori, how can we set up the structure or an environment? And then could you also help us understand from upper elementary, until the age of 12, how can we incorporate sports that just continues seamlessly, effortlessly, in a way where it's child-directed?
The first thing is, as we know, it's a gregarious stage of development. It's something that they want to be surrounded by other children. So the physical activities, the sports, is a wonderful way to do that connection. Sometimes the children at this stage of development, they want to do sports because his friend or her friend is doing sports. And so it is, again, that need to be with others that is going to lead to wonderful things around sports. And then later, they can start to have more friends because they are playing in the same sport. And they are starting to discover themselves because we know that it's a reasoning mind. So they now aware of the things, they are aware of what they are capable for. We know also that this part, the sports can lead, or the physical activity can lead to have this grouping. And at the same time, when they are in groups, is someone that became the leader suddenly, and then other that had many ideas, and other that wants to follow that. And then you can reverse when they move to another level, because now the other one is leading. So they are different things. And this is also important because usually the traditional way we see that the person of the child that is more remarkable is the one that is really good in their studies. But we started to see here in elementary that they discover themselves that they are capable of doing things that are different for the others. Maybe one of them is good in math, but maybe I am good in sports. So that's the way that I really this position, and I follow that. I really want to do more about this. So the school needs to be really aware to have time for them to discover the way that they're going to construct their own rules. And because that's also the stage for rules. The moral part is becoming more aware. So they need to create their own games. They need to discover a new rule. So they want to apply a new rules. So that's wonderful. It's truly a laboratory of life, if we see it, because it's a micro society there that is constructing. So sports is helping in that sense, because the sport has this component of rules that they want to follow the rules. And if someone is not doing that, someone is going to raise a hand, and you are doing this that is not allowed to do. We start to see how this sports, it is again one wonderful experience to complete a set of skills, a set of different things around not just physical, but moral and social and emotional, because we're going to have this experimentation of feelings that sometimes are feelings that we are not having a good time because we miss something or we fail in something, but that's part of life. So the sports is giving us the opportunity to do experimentation of this in a safe level is something that we really want to provide to children. So it is important to have this time that they can do it by themselves, but also then later incorporate the sports now as a discipline, now as something that you need to follow, it's something that has a process and something that you need to start to discover, that you need that order that we mentioned before, and say, okay, you want to go with this, you want to apply it, let's try it. Let's try 1 year, this discipline. Let's try 1 year. And I always encourage the parents to say, let the children do any activity that they want, but take it easy. Just take one, maybe 1 or 2 at week, right? Because sometimes we, as parents, want everything that have 5 languages and 2 music instruments and then 2 sports, and that's too much for a child. So we need to observe what is the best for them. And if they are not okay, you can see through the way that they're feeling, through the anxiety, or because they are tired, you can observe that part. How are the emotion that it is too much, and maybe they need to pick 1 or 2 activities and then follow that. And then And sometimes the children are going to be like, I want to quit. I don't want to do it anymore. But that is also an opportunity to teach them, okay, let's do a commitment. Let's do an agreement for 1 semester or 1 year. And after that year, you can practice another activity. So that's also order. That's also something that we need to give them to structure the mind that said we need to, of course, to have discipline about some action. Don't quit and take another, because they are going to do it again and again and again. And this is not something that we want to teach. It's something that we need to model, saying, okay, this is an agreement. We need to complete this, and then you're going to change if you want it.
What you talked about is like sometimes we have so much desire for our children to learn variety of sports and that overwhelm, and then they become master of none because they're just so overwhelmed with the sports, and just sort of reflecting on the time. I like the fact that you shared 1 or 2 sports max or 1 instrument. And we're talking about children. And I understand as a parent myself, knowing that children's brain is developing at this fast rate, especially by a certain age, and we just want to stuff everything in. You have your own children, and you're a sports psychologist, and you worked with children yourself. How did you navigate as a parent? What information, or how do you figure out which sports to put your child in?
It's always observing, and it's always, of course, motivating to do something. They need to have the will to choose. So one of the things that we mentioned to our children is so you're going to do at least 1 activity. You choose 1 activity, and let's do it. If you want to do it 2, that's fine. But if we're going to observe if you're capable of handle this. If not, we can talk about it and let's help you to go through it. But if it's not, you're going to come back to say it is just 1. We don't give this option to say do it or not. We're just given an option. What is the activity that you like to do? If you observe this, it's kind of the things that we're doing in the classroom, right? It is not an option to work or not. It depends on the day, of course, but it's not that it's going to be the whole time there, but it's what activity that you want to work with. It's not yes or no. I'm telling you, you have all this buffet of activities. So let's find out what is the best. So that's one of the things. The second is also to start to observe if they are still engaged in the activity. In my experience, sometimes they do like the activity, but they don't like the adult leading the activity. So we need to observe that. What it is. It is really the activity, or it is the adult? Or sometimes it is the right time. And I'm not saying about the age also, but I'm saying about the schedule, about the time of the day that they are practicing as well. So we need to observe. We need to be really careful. We know our own child, so we know the way that they behave naturally. So if something is outside the standards, we need to observe it, and we need to address or face this part. So this is something really, really important for them. And again, sometimes they're going to choose the activity because one friend is there. And that's fine. That's perfectly fine in the beginning. They need to follow others. But it's going to be that time where it is not chosen because of that, but actually because you like it. So actually because it is your own will. It is your own work. It's because of you, not because of the others. So we need to observe that and follow that and honor that.
So you're creating little leaders already in elementary and incorporating sports. What you just shared, you're inviting them to have a choice. We have to make decisions as we grow older. And if we don't know how to make decisions, how to choose, how are we going to be able to make life's choices and make decisions? And sometimes it's okay. What I appreciate you said is it's sometimes okay to follow others till you figure out, you know what? I'm not interested in this. So how to say no, how to know what you do like and you don't like, right? So this is the playground where we learn. And had the teacher or had someone, a coach, said, this is what we're going to do, or a parent, you're forced into it. Now you're not taking the responsibility of that choice. The choice is done to you, and therefore you can't take the ownership. You can blame others. But when you choose, is what I really loved hearing from you, is when you choose, now you have this something to follow through, and you've had an agreement that you made with your adult on which sport you're going to do, and you've agreed to it. And now you're saying, we're going to follow through for a year, because every time we don't like something, we can't give up. We have to persevere. And when we follow through, chances are we're going to figure out where the downfall is or where the challenges are. And in the future, how to overcome those challenges. So you're learning a skill, and it's hard to see our young person really, struggle or complain to us about how terrible this situation is. But they're going to face a lot of situations in life, and much rather they deal with some of these disappointments or develop this disappointment muscle under good, loving supervision.
One important part is decision. And I want to mention and make it clear that what actually sports looks like, especially if you're in sports that involves others, it is also that a match, it is 1,000 of decisions, has 1,000 of decisions involved. I'm going to get a ball, I'm going to move forward, I'm going to move back, I'm going to pass, I'm going to throw, So decision is really something that is happening the whole time. If you're playing football, if you're playing basketball, if you're playing baseball, it's always about decision. So this is something that actually is helping you in your life, helping you to understand that it is something that you need to own the decision and to face the consequence of that. If it was a mistake to that, hey, let's move on. Let's continue. That's part of life. That happened. We lose. That's part of life. Let's try harder the next time. So decision is really something really important. And they are doing the decision in seconds. Mm-hmm. It is right there. One decision. Right there. Another one. Right there. I'm going to move this. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to run there. So decision making is something that the sports is giving you. It's having you as a prepared environment to have thousands of decisions in a short amount of time.
We speak about self-regulation often. We want to teach self-regulation to children. And this conversation is bringing about a lot about self-regulation. How can children naturally develop this self-regulation in the context of sports?
It's something that I'm working on with my own. The sports are going to show you about the personality of the children. So the sports is going to offer you also that scenario when you can observe the personality. If they don't like something, or they are suffering something, or they're struggling in something. So if we're really careful observing that, we can take a lot of notes of that. We can take a lot of advantage in how can I support this? Because something that should come naturally is something that we should do side by side as a parents with them. So it's something that we need to be there just to understand the feelings that they are having. And remember myself being a lot of times with my child because he was frustrated after some losing or after he is a goalkeeper, by the way. So it is a complicated position for a soccer game that you can have the decision of is this going to be a goal or not? If I'm capable to stop the ball or not. So sometimes it's just being there. I know that he's frustrated for something like that. And for him, something that helps me, it's just being there, not telling anything. Just remain in silence and be there. I'm going to be here. If you want to talk or not, but that's fine. I'm just going to be here with you. 5 and 10 minutes, and that's it. That's the part that I need. It's not that you go there and you take care of yourself or you deal with that. We need to be there in order to model, in order to follow that part and be there for them. It's not just telling a lot of things. It's just be there and saying that I'm here. If you need anything, just let me know. But I'm going to be here. So it's something that we need to observe because this is the way that worked for my own child. But it's going to be different for your child. It's going to be different because different personalities, different needs. So we need to understand that. And the same thing happen if they are there in the field. If they're on the field, some of the children like to have some insight from the parents or for the coaches. My recommendation is don't do it, but don't say anything because they're playing by themselves. So, but some of them like this atmosphere where they are really there and they want to hear the people that are sharing for them. But some of them, they don't want anything. I remember myself being one of the person that I was playing my whole life, and I don't like my mother there. I don't like it, but it was not something that she was gonna do. But it was I don't want her here. It was just my father there, so I need to go to therapy for that. But this is really important. I was just telling you because it's gonna be different for some of them. They want to be there. They want a hug. They want nothing. Or they want a word. Or it depends. But you need to observe and you need to follow your child to understand what they need.
So curiosity questions, asking children what they want, it's kind of observing what they really like. Because I had no idea that sometimes children do like the external sounds and encouragement. And some are like eccentrically just concentrating, thinking, and just figuring things out for themselves. And it could be a distraction. So I love that maybe as a coach or as a classroom, we figure out what everyone's interests are. We do this in leadership trainings when we're past this learning time and we're now developing forced learning. And we have these team meetings and we try to figure out what makes us tick or what we enjoy and what we don't. But in this playground, they're developing all of these skills to, create peace in the world in the future. Again, I keep going back to the thought of competition as you were speaking about everyone cheering on the sidelines. So when I've experienced sports, it can be competitions. My children were in soccer sports for a long time. And I knew my daughter, she would run for a while and she was out of breath and she didn't like it. And she would stop and every parent around was so frustrated because the ball was right there and she would just give up running and she would just stand there and she would later we found out, that she was having exercise-induced allergy and she was just too hot. However, let's talk a little bit. And the reason why I was just telling you the story is to kind of figure out when this external sound that comes in, we, the adult, wants to cheer them on and we put this pressure for them to make this goal. And now they don't make that goal. And you spoke about children need us. They don't need to just go to their room and figure it out. They're going to need us to process this thing. We're not going to take away some parents who are going to be the cheerleaders or go, go, go. And they're almost playing the game themselves in their mind as they're cheering. How do we develop these muscle of resilience for our young ones, especially in schools or in our home? So when they go out and play and there is this external noise, that there is some sort of a background or there's some place where they can go to recover from what they're getting.
Well, the first thing is that you're going to learn this like the same way that we learn to swim. It is, you need to be there and you need to understand how is that pressure for you and how to handle. The way that it is that, of course, you can bring some feedback, you can have some insights about it, but the way that is this going to be is that they need to be there to have the experience and to understand that. And I'm going to connect this with something that is really Montessori. Being there in a match, being there in a game is like the third period of the lesson. If we understand that there are 3-period lessons, the first that you're presenting, the second that is by themselves that they need to practice repeating, the third one that they're going to show what they learn, is the same thing with a game. The thing is that they need to do it by themselves. And later, there is not the way to do a feedback. This can come later after the game. So that's why it's important that let them do it by themselves. It is a time for them to practice today. And again, sports, as I mentioned about decision, you have 1,000 of decisions at the same time. What is a sport? What are sports if they are not 1,000 of mistakes that we're doing there? 1,000 of failures. That's a game. There are just a few right things. That's a game. So we need to be aware of that. Say, it is impossible that the child can do 100% of good actions in the game. It's impossible. So let them do that. Let them play. They are playing. They like to play, because in that part that you said, we're going to support this atmosphere, how we want to support that. I always can see easily when we are with children playing a game is that it's really frustrating that they always are like hearing the others, especially the parents, because there's a lot of pressure. And usually the pressure are coming not for the other parents or for the other mentors, but actually for their own parents. So we need to be really aware of that. And sometimes, let me explain that. I don't remember exactly the average, but usually there is a huge part of the children that they are going to quit to practice sports because this kind of behavior that the parents are doing, they're going to quit when they reach adolescence. So we need to be really careful about that, because they want to take distance from you. And maybe one of the things that they understand that is something that we can take distance is playing sports. So please observe if they are first playing sports because you want them to play sports, because it's your sport, or because it's your frustration, because you didn't really grow or develop really well in sports. So first that. And then secondly, just leave them. I mean, the coach has a lot of tools, a lot of experience. You need to support in another way. You're not the expert in sports. You're the expert in your maybe yourself. I hope so, in yourself, but not even in your child. But you need to observe it, and you need to discover that secret that Maya Montessori was saying about the secret of childhood. You maybe start to discover something about your own child, but this is a wonderful opportunity to do. And instead of yelling or instead of instructing, just observe and keep all that thing for you and use it whenever you need it, when it's possible to do in a strategic way, nor in a reactive way that we usually do.
Parents and teachers can really benefit from just following the child, which Maria Montessori talks about. And your conversation just now brings so much inspiration about when we follow the child, the process, it's theirs, not ours. Inviting that experience. And it's not about right and wrong, win, lose, better, worse. It's about the journey and the process, because when there's failure, there is a skill building. And it's actually not a failure. It's just a developmental, what you didn't know yet. It's that discovery of the secret of childhood, that immense energy, the child's natural way of being. They already have your amazing genetics from home, parents, and they have this nurturing environment at school. And our children are destined to be anything and everything they want to be if we follow the child. It's very inspiring. Let's talk about older children. And I say older children because we always see them because now their legs are longer and they gain height. They sometimes are so close to our height. And now they're gone through middle school to high school. And now they understand a little bit more. They're developmentally at a different phase. How does sports now, after we've done this sports setting in the primary environment, elementary, middle school, and as they're moving into the maybe 12 to 18 age group?
This is a wonderful stage of development. This is a wonderful thing to understand that there's going to be a lot of changes. They are right now passing to a lot of experience that are going to face refining and the senses in the first plane. We're talking here about refining or personality. So it's something that we also can take in consideration in the sense of playing a sport or not. But one of the needs that they have at this stage is how to, not showing, but how do this experimentation of feelings that is happening inside. Because when you're reaching that age, usually it's something that we put a wall and we just keep it there. So we're just secretly having a lot of feelings, a lot of questions, a lot of things. And when we have the opportunity through movement, through arts, to all of the different kind of expressions, this is the way that they can show where they having. They can show that feeling. They can give this freedom in that sense to show themselves. So it is something that is related in that part. And another kind of relationship is that sports is giving it the opportunity to be with others. Maria Montessori talks about this. Adolescent has a newborn, a new social newborn. So the social newborn means that they have another perspective of life. So it is also another perspective of sports, if we see it. Because now the sports is a way not just to communicate, but to show himself what is capable of in another stage, in another level. And they want to refine that to saying, how is it important in sports for my body? How is important sport for my mind? How is important in sport for the future? Why is so important to practice something in order to be capable to calm myself, in order to be capable to really put everything together? And I'm gonna say this sadly, but it's true. Sometimes the sports is the only place when they can experiment freedom. We understand this. So we said, yes, we need it. We actually need it because in the family, we're going to face a lot of problems. We're going to face a lot of challenge. We don't want to be with our parents. We definitely don't want to be there. So we're looking for a society. We're looking for moving forward to another places, and we're going to experiment the society herself. So it is a good time for experimenting the way we can create our own club, for instance. We can create these opportunities that they can organize themselves, having their own uniform. They can create their own uniform. They can move and having the strategy of the next match. There's a lot of possibilities because they're more independent and they are looking for more independent. They want to know their own process. And again, connected with something that you mentioned before, it is a process. We need to understand as a parent and as a teacher that it is a stage. There's not that they're going to be there the whole time, not understanding the others and not understanding themselves. It is just one stage, and we need to be there physically, but also emotionally for them. Not just physically, because it's something that they want to push you more outside, but at the end, they want to be there. So I always relate this stage also with the when you are in a party, when you're in a meeting with friends and with other children, if we remember what happened with the first playing child, that is always moving a little bit outside the circle, is outside of you, and then come back really quickly. The same thing happened with the adolescent, but you need to observe. They want to go outside and then coming back just to be with you. It's the comfort zone. It's something that they want to touch, but not too much. So we need to be really strategically at the way that we're going to approach this. But again, sports is a wonderful opportunity to meet the needs that the adolescent has at this stage.
Eder, many parents are really concerned about their children not really connecting with them at this age. And what you just shared is they really are going through their own discovery, their own emotional challenges, and they really need the sports. This conversation was incredibly thought-provoking for me, and I hope that the parents and teachers, the guides, will be able to begin their journey in understanding sports from a different perspective if they didn't already have that. You're listening to Now What with Yogi Patel. Eder Cuevas is our guest today, sports psychologist, Montessorian, and thank you for being here today.
Oh, it was a pleasure. I really enjoyed this conversation, Yogi. Thank you for your invitation. And I'm really happy to follow you and to start to know more about the different topics that you address. Thank you.
Thank you. If you like the content of this video, please don't forget to follow. And also, if you want more information, visit the website, yogipateltte.com.